community's acclaim spreads. Word of our community's acclaim spreads. Word of our community's acclaim spreads.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic, what is today? Sunday here on the Exploding Dice channel. My name is Askren, and I am your host, and just one of your dungeon masters. As you can see, we have a fantastic roundtable panel of awesome people here to take you through the magical mystery tour that is our little experimental DM school here on the DM's table. For those of you who don't know, this show is just a fun opportunity for some of us Twitch DMs to get together, have a good time, and kind of either help each other out or maybe improve our craft in some way, while also helping you guys, answering your questions, taking you along the journey, as we all seek to be the best there ever was.
Or possibly shit on each other for their terrible ideas. It's not all about positivity here. Sometimes you gotta be like, look,
alright, negative criticism, negative feedback is an important part of growing as an artist. We are gonna have a fun show for you guys tonight. I have a fun cast. Let me turn down the music just a little bit. Though a couple things to get out of the way before we get into our show, before we introduce our panel and just dive right into it. First and foremost, guys, if you have not already, Dice Thulu has the retweet link for you right there in chat. Go ahead and hit it. Tell all your friends that you are hanging out with us, and all of that good stuff. And make sure you bring your topics and questions that you'd like to discuss or you'd like to ask us or pitch to the panel, because we will try and get to all or as many as we can in the second half of the show. Other than that, the other thing that I wanted to say was we are just a couple followers away from that big 3,000. When we hit it...
You're 4 followers away. Guys, follow him. Don't be a jackass.
We're just a couple followers away. And when we do hit it, probably not on this show, but later on tonight during Mouse Guard, I am going to be giving away this here Wormwood dice box as a celebration for 3,000 followers.
If I don't win this is rigged. Just saying. If I don't win that, I legitimately do not own a dice box.
I can
roll my dice. I put it in my monitor area. And just hope.
Do you want? Hold on, wait. Do you want one of these?
Oh yeah, dude, that's sick.
Because I could get you one of these. Look at that. Look at it.
That's actually amazing. I don't have to feign interest.
This one is also super special. This one is super special, but so I can't give you this one, but
don't clip that.
Somebody go find the clip button.
Yeah.
It's right there down at the bottom. No, we will be giving away this awesome Wormwood dice box. This is one of my second to last ones that I have in the house. The other one I don't know if I want to give away because it's like this super amazing, really like dark wood that I love, and I might keep that as my own. But yeah, guys, that's the 3,000 follower giveaway. That'll be going on tonight after Mouse Guard. So hopefully you guys will be in chat so you can win it. That's where you're gonna have to be. Other than that, there's not much I want to go over other than this week has been super amazing. Last week we did the first episode of the show, and it was a ton of fun. We had some other new shows launched this week, and I could not have been happier with the way they went. So thank you guys so much for your support, and I'm looking forward to meeting a whole bunch of you at PAX Unplugged coming up. All the other good stuff we'll talk about at the end of the show. Let's turn to our panel. Let's go around real quick and just have everyone introduce yourselves and give your credentials here. Your show your DM ID. And why don't we start right next to me once again with Laurelania.
Hi, I am Laurelania. I've been playing D&D since 2nd edition revised. I don't have a lot of experience outside of D&D because in my opinion it's the greatest game that there is, but I have dabbled in Lord of the Rings, Vampire the Masquerade, and actually I really think that's about it. Yeah, Lord of the Rings, and I really want to play the Firefight role-playing game, and we were also discussing something that I'll wait till everybody else has introduced themselves, because that's a good enough tangent right there on its own. You missed a video, but you're gonna love the idea, I think.
Uh-oh.
I think.
And right below her, actually on the channel for the first time here, making his debut is Video Store Cowboy. How's it going, man?
Very good about yourself.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
When you ask stuff like that, it's like I want to respond with, "Hey, how you doing too?" You know, like
Damn
I'm
your
Johnny.
manners in being brought up in a civilized society. How
No, it's
dare you?
You haven't become.
grandparents. I forgive me.
You haven't learned to be self-centered enough to be a real streamer.
Not yet. I'm working on it. Give me a try. Give me a couple weeks.
Spend enough time here. You will.
Oh, well, I am Johnny. I run the Video Store Cowboy channel. I'm also the GM for 6 and 20, which is a crazy Blades in the Dark 3-night-a-week kind of thing that runs on 3 different channels. I've been playing D&D since junior high, and well, I'm in my 40s, so let's just put it that way. But I've just been discovering a bunch of interesting things since rediscovering D&D and things like Blades in the Dark, City of Mist, the Star Wars RPG, and so I've been playing a ton of stuff.
Oh, Star Wars is another one. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just super excited about where tabletop has gone in the time that I've been playing it. So I just love it. I have a good time.
Awesome, man. Good to have you here. And last but not least is Mr. Impious. How's it going, my friend?
It's good. I have no idea why I'm here. I don't belong with any of these people. They just kind of blindfolded and hijacked me. No, I run Dungeons and Distractions here on Twitch. We have 2 D&D games, and we have a show where we go through and try out different systems for a month, which has been a lot of fun. I've been playing D&D since right after I got out of high school. So it's been we're not gonna say how many years. It's been a couple though.
Why you guys
come on, man.
it's so ageist,
Come
man?
on, man. If I can say I'm in my 40s, you're good.
The older you get, the better you get. Okay, like
I don't know.
leveling up.
My memory is going, so I don't know if that's true. Well, guys, an awesome cast here. Definitely interested to get into it to see where they're coming from as far as RPGs and just what kind of tangents we can get involved on. I will say before we dive right into it, I wanted to thank Summer's Dragon and I Am Darth Mole and Guidrillion. I'm gonna pronounce that right, and Meerkat X and Robin H for the follow. Thank you guys for joining us and welcome to the madness. Once again, please hit that follow button if you are enjoying the content, and of course, if you do really want to support the channel, you can hit that subscribe button. Help us produce some awesome content here. Okay, so we, I guess the first thing that I kind of like to start with as a personal bit, because we all are running campaigns right now. We all have a lot that's going on. So why don't we go around the table? I'm really interested. We shared a little bit last week, but tell me guys about your campaign. I guess if you have more than one, you can kind of sum them up really quickly. How are things going right now? And more importantly, is there anything about is there anything that you have found either great success or great failure with in your campaigns recently? Those are always interesting topics to discuss. Why don't you start, Tia?
Great failure is my time management when it comes to campaigns. I think that we all have this whole world that we want to get out into our head, and I'm trying this. Who did like IRC roleplay back in the day on forums or something like that? I am trying to make old new again, and I am combining the power of Discord meets Roll20. You have a character sheet in Roll20, but you text-based roleplay that out inside of Discord. And I'm like, how hard could it possibly fucking be to manage to type a couple of paragraphs into a Discord every day? Turns out it's really hard. I am struggling, and I'm so thankful to the people that are showing interest in it. But it's like, as I'm trying to continue to world build and fall back on just getting the posts out there, it's hard. I used to just sit as a kid in the library for hours role-playing on Neopets, and now I don't have that energy. You laugh! Neopets role-playing was the shit, okay? It was fucking awesome! I
Hey.
roleplayed Driz Duerden, and I was amazing, and it was so serious.
You
We
were the
had a
most
group of, like,
hardcore
50
Neopets
people.
trainer. Do you train Neopets? I don't know. I've never.
You
don't
do
remember.
you do train them, and you paint them. And I had a rainbow painted Shoiru, which was like a limited edition fucking thing at the time. As the first time my account ever got hacked, and the guy stole my account, and I'd been playing it for years, and I'm still heartbroken. Like, fuck you, random hacker who hacked into my Hotmail account and stole my Neopets and stole my name, because nobody believed me when I came back to the role playing forums either. They're like, no, you're not.
Was your email like XX Dark Drist 91
Oh, it was
XX?
like Driz Duerden 70 something. Like, it was just the hurtingest prepubescent fucking email you could come up with. And yeah, no two-factor authentication in those days. I tell you
No.
what, it was brutal. But
No,
yeah,
no.
that's
So you could
kind of
copy
what's
and
going on in my
Clip
campaign.
Penguin or something, and then just start the RP process over at Clip Penguin.
Oh
Until
my
it
god.
yeah.
People are talking about AOL chat rooms. I told people on, because people were begging me on Twitter about my horribly shitty old screen name on AOL, and it was the worst thing ever. And
Come on. You can't lead up with that and not put it on the table.
Okay, so I should preface this by saying if you don't know like early 2000s or late 90s Dragon Ball Z, it won't make any sense to you.
Okay.
But if you do,
I love these two are already. Okay, can I have some guesses from the two gentlemen in the lower boxes, please? Two guesses.
No, I know nothing about Dragon Ball Z.
Okay, me
but
neither.
it's funny because I know a number of people who have pulled, their gaming names, their names that they play with from Dragon Ball Z, and it's always funny because there's always weird and random stuff. Like,
right.
First
So
I ever heard the word Goku was because somebody was had titled that themselves in their IRC chat, and I was like, okay.
So there's in Dragon Ball Z there's a character named Vegeta, and there's his son named Trunks, and those are the American names. And my screen name in like 1997 was X Majin Vegetanks 25, and it was a combination of those two names, and it was horrible. And ironically, the name Askren actually comes from the character that I made on AOL roleplaying immediately after that screen name.
That's great. That's a long ass fucking screen name, dude.
It is.
It is, but no. The longer your screen name was, the cooler you were.
Oh god.
Is that why everybody added X's to them?
Yes.
Just to make them longer
Actually,
for...
I remember that in MySpace and MSN things, and you'd have all the hearts and the emojis and stuff that people don't like nowadays, and you'd like spam the off and on button so people would see you go online like a million times. God, we are fucking old.
This was back when AOL made a loud screeching noise in the early morning hours.
One of my first jobs was doing support for AOL dial-up
Oh god.
service.
I'm sorry.
And I still have nightmares about modem noises.
This is ironically back when you didn't even need first of all, speakers came installed in computers for some reason, and so you couldn't not hear, but also the modem noise didn't come from the speakers, so there was no way to quiet it.
Oh my god.
Oh, someone kill me. I'm so old. All right.
I won't even tell you how old I am, although I already did, didn't I?
Yeah.
So I actually started playing play-by-post on CompuServe. I don't know if you guys remember CompuServe, but that was like 1989 or 1990, and that was ridiculous. That was, and screen names were just assigned to you at that point. You couldn't even reserve a screen name. So yeah, people have been playing for it for. Between the BBSs and the old MUDs from the 70s and the early 80s, and it's some crazy ass shit.
Miss it.
So
I miss it.
So Tia,
I really do.
What were you saying that about it that has been? I guess you were talking about failure. Has that kind of ended?
It's kind of
in failure?
No, it's still going. I still plan like this will be my baby for the next course of hopefully forever. I mean, obviously over time every chat system that we use evolves. I mean, we went from Ventrilo to Raid Call to Razer Comms to Discord. Like, who knows what's to Skype? I don't even want to say it. who knows what's next on the horizon, but I hope it transfers over. I never realized on those role-playing forums how much work mods actually have to put in. And now, because I want to combine it and I want to keep it on track with D&D and keep the rules in there, I want it to hopefully eventually flow on its own, where I have competent players who understand the rules well enough for D&D and can just go through combat actions on their own and eventually start doing that. Because we did combat before there was even rules in posting and stuff like that. You know, you just tried not to god mode too hard. Now I can actually have a list. So it's just like I was saying right before the show started, need 10 days in a week, man.
Yeah. I hit that feeling kind of hard today because we just finished casting and stuff on a new show that I'm really excited about, and I'm like, I already want to start putting something else together, and then I realized, no, I don't actually have any more days left. It's just, there's no time.
No, there's more time. It's time in the day. It's going to feed into the rest of your day, right? And all of a sudden, you're going to be doing 3 shows a day and 4 shows a day, right?
Right, except that I also won't be paying bills, so I'll probably be doing that from the box in the alleyway. Stealing Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi from the Starbucks.
I was just gonna say, we can make a new hit program. We can have drive-by Starbucks RPGs. Can you imagine? Just LARP suddenly taking place in Starbucks, and they can't do anything because you're buying coffee and you're allowed to stay there.
Bring back roleplay by mail.
Oh no! Oh my god!
Man, so Johnny, what about you, man? What any major successes, any major failures, any cool things to talk about from your recent games?
So the interesting thing about running, so the only thing I'm running right now online on Twitch is the 6 and 20 world, and it's across the 3 channels. And the thing that blows me away is how much I didn't anticipate how crazy the players would be across 3 different games, right? And the shenanigans that they would start to pull to try to, essentially get at each other, kind of get under each other's nerves. That's the challenges that I face on a weekly basis. The successes this week was I saw from, well, we only ran 2 of the 3 casts because Halloween was on Tuesday, so. One of the casts took the night off, but I saw some amazing successes from how well the players just stepped up and, role played their character. I mean, just the dramatic moments that just kind of arose from the story. That we've been going for 19 episodes at this point per show, and it's phenomenal to watch these players who are just absolutely fell in love with their characters, just bring out the best in their role play as the story unfolds in front of them. And I'm afraid because next week we're going to do our end of our season 2 and we're going to take a couple weeks off. I'm just hoping I can come up with something, to be strong enough for them for that season 2 finale so that they can have that amazing successful moment. So yeah, it's crazy. I don't know if I'll ever do it again. It's pretty freaking crazy, but I enjoy the hell out of it. And I have what I call the 6 and 20 hangover every Friday night because I'm done. I'm taxed. I'm wiped out from all the amazing things that the players do. So
the DM hangover, that's a good term right there. It's so true though, because such a build up into that point, and then when you're done, you're just like, fuck, little freedom.
I don't know because every day of the week I have something going on now, and it's just a constant cycle between
you need time off to recharge that creative bubble, dude. You 100% gotta take an Askren day.
I feel like that's my time as a player is generally when I do that, because as a player my brain just kind of goes into vegetable mode. Because you don't have to pay attention to 100 things: the streaming, the DMing, the pace, the time, who's paying attention, who's not. As a player, I just kind of turn all that noise off, and I'm just like, "Hi, what are we fighting today?"
Being a player is so great.
It might be, but I feel like because I DM so much, I'm an awful player. I'm pretty sure I am.
I had that experience recently where I felt just like I wasn't doing myself justice as a player and wasn't doing the table justice because I was so used to running the game.
Yeah.
That I was missing cues.
When you don't have the things circling your head, it's like, what do I? So I reckon it to this. If you've ever been in art school, there's a figure drawing thing where they give you, there's a model and you do a quick figure sketch, right? And you do like 20 seconds, and then the teacher says, okay, now you're gonna do the same thing but in 10 seconds, right? You 10-second sketches, and then okay, now you're gonna do it in 5 seconds, and then he's like, okay, now you have a minute, and you're like, I don't know what to do with all this time. That's how I feel when I'm a player, right? It's like I don't know what to do with all this free time. I don't know what to focus on, and I feel like I just sort of
had that
veg
problem,
out.
but I am such a fucking camera hog, and like I am such a DM hog. I am so guilty of monologuing. I know it's hard to believe, but
It's funny. I found that because we have a show where like every other month somebody else DMs, either me or another DM, and we switch back and forth. And I found that when I am actually a player, I feel like I'm overstepping, like I'm just talking all the time and like getting involved with things, and I have to go like, are you guys getting enough time while I do this? Because I feel like I do like take center stage a lot when I'm doing it.
I would rather, honestly, as a DM, have players that talk too much than have players that talk too little, though, because you can set up a scene and then people just kind of stare at each other like, what are we supposed to do? Anything, just
Just
do something.
interact.
Yeah.
Now kiss.
I love having a couple players at the table, like where you will set up the scene and they will just instinctively, and you learn to trust this after a couple of sessions, but they will instinctively take over the scene.
Yeah.
Build it up for the players, the rest of the players who are not necessarily the ones that will step up and initiate, but they will respond in very significant ways, especially if it's from the other players. And one of the things that I find interesting about that is that often it's because there is this leftover residual perception either from new players or from players who experienced this previously, but it's an us versus them kind of a situation. It's the DM versus the players kind of a thing, and that's no longer the case in most tabletop, right? And so for some players it might still be the perception or the approach, and there's those other players that just do a phenomenal job. Hey, no, we're going to do this, or hey, I'm going to engage you and do this, and all of a sudden the scene takes off on its own, and I just have to go here, just put little bits in, right? So.
Yeah, that's actually something where I want to try and talk about a little bit later. But I guess lastly, Impious, is there anything you've been experimenting with or has been going well for you?
So we didn't really kind of experiment with this, but it's one of those things that I just said, fuck it, let's do it and see how it works. But we had a player miss a session last week, like you do. I mean, that's a thing that comes up. Getting 4 human beings in the same place at the same time is nigh impossible sometimes. So what we did is we actually did like a flashback with the characters that were able to make it kind of before they made their way to the campaign so that we continued and had a session. We were still able to build up those characters and give them some more backstory and flesh them out. And we could drop one player out easily because, he just wasn't there for that adventure. They hadn't met him yet or whatever in the timeline. And so that worked really well. And I think that that's going to be something that we kind of continue to do to make sure that we don't miss sessions, is just kind of go back to old adventures before, whatever current the campaign is. But that worked out really well. I was really happy with the way that it played out.
Interesting. I've always been kind of wary about like when the player's out, be like, okay, we're gonna do something else today, right? Essentially, something that's not the story that you guys were in last week. Like, I always feel as if I'm gonna do that and people are just gonna lose the engagement.
I suffered that same problem too. Anytime a player drops out, I'm just like, nope. We are going to pick it up next week because I have carefully, lovingly crafted this story and I am too afraid to go outside of my bubble. And I think that's because I'm such a new DM that I'm not really willing to flex the DM muscles yet and be like, okay, let's do something off the top of my head. And that's something that I struggle with, is like, I think perhaps creating like almost like a one-shot scenario every time a player is missing might work out better.
Right, and in my head, I don't mind that because, like, in my head, whenever someone misses a session or whenever we, like, a bunch of people, I'm like, I would always rather do something than do nothing, especially now that Twitch is involved, right?
Yeah, especially if you're streaming.
Because not streaming kind of hurts your numbers and your retention and all that background stuff. But I wish I could explain the amount of times that I've said to my players, because it's easy for me to throw out just a fun one-shot that we can do that doesn't affect anything, right? Like, different characters, whatever, different game, I don't care, whatever, a one-shot of something, and the players would just be like, I'd just rather do nothing, I'd just rather wait till next week.
Yeah, I've never really considered asking the players what they want to do.
We talked about
I do that, maybe that's a problem, maybe I do that too much.
We talked about doing a one shot like Everyone is John or something, just for the day so that we still had some content for the channel. But it got to the point where it's like, we're the relatively new characters and new players. We haven't really fleshed out backstories a whole lot for them. If we go back and do, hey, this was an adventure before you guys started the campaign, it kind of helps build up backstories, and now the characters have a little bit more involvement with each other. So I think it worked out well, actually.
Fair enough.
There are opportunities, I think, for both things to work, where it's even in the structure of a campaign, maybe there's a side story that you can tell without that character being there if you're in the right place for it. When I was doing Star Wars, at least privately, as a home game, and somebody wouldn't show up, we would do one shots and we would explore various other elements in the world. And so I'm looking forward to incorporating that in the next thing that I decide to do. Where we get a lot more control over just it being a single set of players and not multiple groups, and just being able to go and explore exactly what you're talking about, going into the backstory, doing something different, or even telling a different element of the story. But I think, and it sounds like in a couple of cases, it sounds like it's a conversation that you have to have with your players even before you go live with a show, because it's like, well, life happens, take care of yourself, that kind of a thing, but we need to plan and prepare for this to have it happen. If it happens, we need to be able to do this kind of thing.
That's a really, really good idea. Before any show that you start, acknowledge the fact that people are just shit happens. What are we gonna do when shit happens? Yeah. I'm gonna start doing that. That's brilliant. That's fucking brilliant.
And the thing is, by and large, I don't cancel a show just because one person's missing. That's why I cast 4 people, is because 3 people can still have a show. It's when 2 people can't make it that obviously we'll cancel the show. But
it's a little harder to do if there's only 2 players. Yeah.
But I usually don't cancel if one person's missing. I guess maybe that's just, again, that everyone has a different threshold, I guess.
Yeah, I think we did in the past, and I kind of want to move away from that, and that's why the idea of just kind of doing these flashback one shots kind of really worked. Because I used to cancel shows, and I really usually get to the point where all right, I can't really do that just because one person's missing. So how do we make it still work without leaving somebody behind? Like, oh, you just didn't experience all this content that happened last session, and we move the story forward. Or how do you handle that and balance that, and make sure that they're still invested in the campaign?
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention experience and level differencing. If people keep falling behind, do you just let that player be the weakest link, or?
I don't even, because we don't do experience points, so I don't really say if you missed a session, you are now behind in experience.
Well, my god. I treat experience like candy for my players. You wrote a 5-page story on your background, fucking here's some experience. You roleplayed really well, here's some experience. You pissed me off, I'm taking some of your experience.
And I just do milestones, so it's easy to kind of keep everybody at the same spot.
Yeah, basically.
Well, I think when you're doing D&D, that's really relatively easy, but I think there are other systems that just make it really, really difficult. If you can't, milestones are not necessarily a 1-to-1 in other systems, and
right.
Then the leveling curve is so different in D&D than it is in most other systems. So
yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
All of my comments will always be D&D circled. That I have to keep in mind as you guys play other games.
Fair enough.
You might like it.
Most of mine are D&D, but yeah.
This is the point that I wanted to bring in before you joined us. So I'm a Rick and Morty fan. Huge Rick and Morty fan. And I wanted to talk about Rick and Morty the tabletop role-playing game. And apparently it doesn't exist. And I think it would make a fucking fantastic role-playing game.
I think it would, like every game, I think that depends a lot on the players.
I think it's just so easy to set up adventures because all you gotta do is, I'm Rick, here's a fucking portal gun, we're going to a new world. What the fuck is happening here? You don't even need to chain the events together. It can be completely random for no purpose.
I feel like you could do exactly that with Everyone is John, or something exactly like it.
I think Everyone is John is pretty close to something like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but there's a huge amount of appeal to playing in the Rick and Morty
Right?
universe.
No. I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you have to play Everyone is John. I'm saying if you have played Everyone is John, you know why it's basically exactly the same. Not the same mechanical thing, but and Everyone is John session could easily be a Rick and Morty episode.
Paranoia makes a good
Paranoia. Paranoia is
sideline
a good
for Rick
one
and
too.
Morty. Yeah.
Where's the one that Impus researched and said that it?
Was it
Monsters and Other Childish Things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't actually played that one yet.
Neither have I. Same person who made Monster Hearts made that, I think.
Sounds right.
Maybe, I don't remember. For me, by the way, something that I have tried recently that really went well, actually. So if you guys watch Writhing Moon, we did an episode last night, where the players were coming up on this big sort of, I don't want to say, I guess it was a climax. They were coming up basically face to face with this horrible creature, this horrible wet nurse creature, and in the shadow of the giant moon that is kind of looming over this world and approaching closer and closer, Four on the forefront was the player that the spotlight was on at the moment, and he was basically standing before this giant eldritch horror that was bearing down on him and was like using its ethereal lullaby to, like, I don't know, do something. I never even made up what it was gonna do to him. I don't even know what it was gonna do. It was just bearing down on him, and he had to make a choice because he had 3 conflicting voices in his head at that particular time. He could either accept this horrible eldritch creature and let it do whatever it wanted. He could accept the voice that was coming from within, which is actually, he knows, the voice of another eldritch creature that a piece of it lives inside of his body and gives him his powers. And the third voice was Speedy's character, who actually had put a bunch of his blood inside of Four to revive him, and so was trying to kind of break the shackles. And so I didn't really know, like, there was no way for me as a DM in the moment to accurately portray the gravitas of all of these things at the same time. So or to really make to decide which of them was the most important, and I didn't want it to come down to just a die roll, because that didn't seem interesting. So the experiment here was I turned to Four and I said, this is a story decision. I want you to tell me what happens to your character here. Like, tell me where your character falls on it. Like, what influence do you think will take over and will define this scene, right? Does he accept his friend and the voice of his friend in his head? Does he accept the power that he has been using for this whole campaign? Or does he give himself over to the madness of this world? And I don't want to give away any spoilers because the end of the episode was fucking fantastic, but he was not taken aback by me saying, like, what do you think happens in this situation? What happens to your character right now? He was ready to sort of just jump in and take that sort of scene and play this awesome conclusion there. And I give a ton of credit to his background as a Mouse Guard DM, which is a very sort of narrative system where players kind of make those narrative decisions on their own. But it was something that I found found a lot of power in, essentially allowing the players, not just necessarily rolling the dice, but allowing the players to define sort of how the story swings for their characters, or kind of create their own dramatic moments. Basically, knowing that they may not necessarily choose the most profitable or the most successful or the least harmful outcome for their character. They might choose the one that's the coolest, even if it's deadly or dire.
I think it takes time for characters to be able to develop that sense of I don't always have to be the best at everything.
Well, I think that comes to a lot of trust in your players too, because I have a fifth ed game that I ran a couple of years ago, where literally they would just do whatever works out best for their characters. Had I given them that option, but now the game that I'm running, I can give my players some weird options like that, and I know that they will choose something that's more interesting and not just what benefits them. So I think that's a lot to do with the maturity of the players at the table too.
Yeah, there.
Maturity of the players or maturity of the or experience of the players? Because I think that new players won't make those decisions as much as experienced players will.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there's both a sort of a maturity level, right? Like an engagement with the world and the story that is inherent there, but also a trust that the play. I'm putting my trust in the player there, but I also, because I know that, or I feel like I know that the player would make great moments, not necessarily like I'm gonna I choose for my character to okay, Mouse Guard is a really interesting system. If you're not familiar with it, when you get a tie in Mouse Guard, you can either spend points and try and add dice and stuff to re-roll to beat the tie, or you can choose to break the tie against you. You can essentially choose to fail the check and accept the consequences of failure, basically so you can win checks later in the game. But
Right.
but it's interesting because it's an option that not a lot of systems give you.
Yeah, well, so I think there's a fair amount of discussion that can happen around how much of the game should be played from a straight mechanics standpoint to how much of the game is all about telling the story and playing the narrative. And one of the things that you need to focus on, or at least I feel like I need to focus on when I'm playing and I'm running a stream at the same time, or I'm on a stream and I'm running a game, is I need to make sure that there is this balance of doing both of that. And so I think it's awesome that you decided to do that, and it worked out incredibly well. And it sounds like and I know Speedy is a phenomenal, he will make phenomenal decisions for the characters, based on what 6 and 20. So it's awesome to hear that 4 was doing the same thing. We do exactly that over on 6 and 20 all the time. I will hand off, those dramatic moments and just say, here, do this, because the dice roll is interesting, but I don't want to make that decision, or I don't even want a chance to make that decision. I want you to narrate your way through this, or I want you to have dialogue. Like occasionally we will have players play NPCs in order to make it more dramatic for the player that's in that particular moment, and it has worked out phenomenally for us a couple of times. And I throw a couple things at the one player and I say, here, go with this. This is the motivation. Just go with it. And I'll message them privately. But I like those dramatic moments where they make the decisions at the table like that. And I think I'm glad it worked out for you guys. I'm going to have to go back and watch that episode, specifically because I love those moments in games, because those are game-changing moments. Those are the moments when you realize your game has stepped it up a level in its dramatic play, and the audience just totally appreciates that as well. But as Eric is pointing out in chat, there is this thing in Blades in the Dark specifically where they highlight your life sucks as a scoundrel. Your circumstances are hard. And you are always facing consequence. Even in success, you're always facing consequence. And it makes for really interesting, dramatic shifts in the way that storytelling happens, whether it's private, at your own table, or it's, on a stream. And that game is all about permission to be a bad person. And in being a bad person, there's always bad consequences that come up as well. And it has changed my perception of how role-playing games should be run. From a mechanics perspective, because it's so liberating, because it's always about the narrative position first before the mechanical decision, and then just the freedom that it gives you to make decisions at the table and have that become the precedence of your circumstances. So I'm a big fan of my players taking the initiative and starting to establish story. So I think that's awesome that it worked out for you. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons I love that game is because we play some mechanics, but we also play very fast and loose with them because all of us agree that it's so much more about the story and the dramatic connections and decisions that the players themselves are making. And we've all kind of like we've talked about it, and I've kind of given them carte blanche to run with whatever they think would be interesting or create the most dramatic effect in this world. And also the reason that I love it, and the reason I it might fall a little bit flat for a viewer if they're only coming in at this particular episode, but the thing that happened at the end was so interesting to me because this world is horror and it's blood and it's mind twisting and never knowing what's real. And there was a section in the middle where the players did not trust each other because all of their horrible things that they'd gone through and they'd done in the past and who they were was kind of coming out and was being revealed to them kind of by force. And so they were kind of actively butting heads. And so it's really interesting to see them kind of dredging through that and actually forming these really, really solid connections and relationships, basically as we essentially wind through the final arc of this, or what might be the final arc of this game. And it's just been really, really interesting to me. I love that. I love when players kind of make those connections and then decide where those bonds are and how they define them in the way that I don't have to.
I love player conflict. I feed on it. It
Yeah.
is probably something that you should not do as a DM, especially. You generally want players working together, but I don't know. There's just something so fascinating to me as a human being to take four people who are generally pretty cool with each other, fuck, even friends, best friends, whatever, watch them play these characters that want to like strangle each other, and then like 10 minutes later you're out getting KBBQ or something, you know? I love player conflict. I think it adds such a great depth to the story, and it ticks me off sometimes when DMs are like, no player conflict.
Well, there's
like
good player conflict and there's bad player conflict, right? I don't know
if it goes outside of the table, then absolutely. But it becomes just a screaming match after a while. Then not fun.
That becomes a player maturity thing again. Like I've had players that get pissed off the table because of things that happened,
right?
From another player at the table. I'm like, no, you have to leave that at the table. That's that character. That's not the person playing that character. You can't get mad at the player for that character's actions.
Right. And I once had to kind of disarm a player who insisted that like some conflict that we were playing, as this happened in one of our games where mental stability and sanity were a very big aspect of this game, and so the players often did things that didn't seem sane, or they would kind of snap, and one of the players insisted that something that happened was the result of out of the game feelings, and we had to disarm that, but and that does it. But then again, I've also have other things happening where it's like the players are at each other's throats, and I literally have to go to them after the game and be like, are we okay? Like, is everything all right? And they're like, no, I'm fine. Like, this is all, like, I love this. This is great. But it's just their characters are physically butting heads. That's the stuff that I love, is I love when players can act out, like, distrust or hate or, antipathy at the table.
You and your fucking big college words. Piss off with that shit, okay? Like, fuck off.
Also, congrats, Askren. You hit 3K.
Oh no! Did we do it?
Yeah,
I've been watching because my numbers aren't going up. Oh, thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for the follows. By the way, thank you HB Fox and Draceman and Earthen Lady and Machine Gun X93 for following. Thank you guys for joining us and welcome to the madness. If that is our 3K, then if you guys are just joining us, later tonight. come back tonight for
Don't
Mouse
come
Guard.
back.
Don't come back for
No,
Mouse Guard.
don't come back.
Don't watch
Don't.
Mouse Guard. It's a train wreck. No.
No, I'm saying don't come back so I can be the only one in chat to win the box. There's nothing happening later.
Thank you guys
Don't
so
worry
much.
about it.
We're gonna be giving away this here Wormwood Dice Vault. It's just a really cool,
No,
I think,
inside.
Poisonwood dice box with an awesome name. Gonna be giving this away at the end of the Mouse Guard show tonight. So thank you guys so much. While you guys are here, I should, by the way, tell you, if you have not already, Dice Dude's got a link for you right there. Go ahead and enter our monthly giveaway. We're giving away a whole bunch of Pathfinder stuff. We got a hardcover core rulebook. We got an adventurer's guide, and we've got a 500-piece Bestiary 5 pawn box. And you guys can win all of that at the end of November. All you got to do is hit that link if you're already following on Twitch and Twitter. You already got entries, so go claim them. And glad that you guys are interested in the dice box. Come back tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern. That's when Mouse Guard is. And we give it away.
I really love the point that your mod brought up, Firebringer Axel.
Yes.
As a habitual lawful evil player, I love those times of player conflict and stuff like that. And it's hard to tell newer players that it's okay to be evil and you can still work in a party. A lot of people think that being evil means you're just against everybody, but you can be evil and work extremely well with good characters.
This is a point that I'm a stickler on, and it's only because I am a huge nerd about semantics. Evil and good in D&D are not the words evil and good in the English language. There's a capital G and a capital E, and there's a reason for that. We have a definition, and I think this is actually a problem with the language, and a problem. I don't think evil and good are necessarily the right terms for this, and I think it causes a little bit confusion because we have evil and good mean things in our language, right? We say evil and we think someone who's doing horrible things, but in D&D, evil literally just means selfish.
Yeah.
That's so true, and that's why I wish they'd bring in the in-demeanor system to D&D. Like, your in-demeanor being what you really are is, like, let's say a neutral evil, but your demeanor to the rest of the world is, hey, everybody, let's get along, you know? Let's all work together.
White Wolf did that really well with their nature and demeanor system.
Yeah, I really, there's a few things that I really like from Vampire. One is the D10 rolling system. Don't get me wrong, I love my dice.
System.
Oh, man, I loved it. But that was also when I was playing 2nd Ed. Now that D&D 5e is out, every week we're going to cover this properly, but I think 5th edition is becoming my favorite D&D edition of all time, and it's hard to, like, not pull away from THACO and all that stuff, but I really like how this game is balanced and how it plays.
THACO means flashbacks. THACO really means, more marks at the table than it's absolutely required. Yeah, bless you. 2nd edition was great for a lot of reasons, but THACO was not one of them.
Yes, it was.
Oh my!
Yes, it was. Armor Class 0 was so easy.
I will agree that 5th edition is probably my favorite D&D edition, but having picked up Blades in the Dark a couple of months ago, I think Blades in the Dark is my favorite game system so far. There was just so much flexibility with it that I really enjoyed it, and the stories got complicated even when the players succeeded. And as a mechanic, that's a lot of fun. I just want to say I have the Blades in the Dark special edition. I've been flipping through it. I'm horrible. Like, when I get a new book, I don't want to break the spine and I don't want to, like, flip through it a lot, but
I had pizza stains in my book the first day. I write with permanent fucking marker in my books for a campaign.
I'm never letting you near my books.
No, please don't.
I don't give a shit.
I paid good money for that special edition. No, but I've been reading through little by little recently. I haven't gotten a chance to play it, but I've been trying to internalize the system. I also am so bad at learning new systems. There's too many in my head, and, like, one pushes out another.
Yeah, I understand what you mean by that. I'm currently reading the City of Mist, just released their core book, and I'm currently digging through that. And it's conflicting a little bit with the way that the Blades in the Dark rules work. But going back to Blades in the Dark, the interesting thing about that, and then in contrast to D&D, is something you guys were talking about, talking about the definition of good and evil. Do we really need an alignment system anymore?
I like it.
It's a controversial question, I know, but
what are you writing? What is wrong with you? What are you doing, you horrible human being?
I just want you to feel it.
Video for a second.
Oh, let me bend this spine for you. Does that do it for you? Oh my god.
Oh, okay. Let me tell you. Let me go on a little tangent. I was a chef for almost 10 years. And
I can see they're actually agitated because the redness in their face.
It is. I was gonna say I was a chef for almost 10 years, and the one thing that would almost would drive me to murder was someone using knives on a stainless steel counter. That is how much that hurt to watch.
That is not cool. Yeah, no, I love knives and cooking, and yeah, that'll
Oh,
too.
you are an evil person.
That's neutral evil right there for you. It's just doing something evil. Back to your point about the alignment system and whether or not we need them, I'm going to go on the side of yes, for new players. For new players, I think it's important to give them roles to fill, because as a new player, it's hard for people to find themselves and find their characters, and you kind of have to set up those guidelines for them. For players who have been playing for 10 years, fuck no, let them be good one day, bad the next. They know what they're doing.
So
Right,
I think for new players, especially for 5th edition, we maybe don't need it as much because of the fill-in and the backstory, where you're picking your job that you had before you were an adventurer, and the way that kind of fills in, and choosing those kind of informs how the character is going to play a little bit more, where maybe we don't need that alignment as much.
Well, so I'll take it, I guess. So I actually spent about 15 years away from tabletop. Raising a kid, doing the whole thing, and I came back to it. And my daughter is now 20 years old, and she just recently asked me for the first time, about 2 years ago when she was 18, she asked me to run her and some friends through D&D. And I so it got me back in because she was asking about it, and next thing you know, she's on my Tuesday show on my channel, and so it's great. We're role playing together. It's a lot of fun. So the thing is, though, instead of having them go through the character creation process, all of her friends have her go through the character creation process, I picked on an idea that I had heard way back in the day, and decided to see if that would work. And I said, guys, go out and pick your favorite superhero, or go out and pick your favorite movie character, right? If it's Molly Ringwald in 16 Candles, or it's Michael Cera in Scott Pilgrim, or whatever it is. Go pick the character that stands out as fantastic and just play that character. Bring that character to the table. And they got motivations. They got, their sense of, right and wrong, all of their moral structure, their background, all from that. And they didn't, I didn't force them to go through and say, well, this is my background in the game. This is, and they had a great time because they knew the essentially the rails with which they would, step into the world. And then subsequently, we would introduce, more and more complicated rules. But we played 5th edition. 5th edition is great because it's 3 roles in the truth, right? There's nothing else but those 3 types of roles. And I think that is incredibly liberating for new players coming in the door.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and these were kids who hadn't even experienced, Critical Role or anything else.
There's an interesting point in chat. I'm trying to see who says it. Eric. Eric says that alignment systems shouldn't matter until later levels. And I do think that there is some truth in that, because and this is like I'm a fan. So at lower levels, I do kind of believe that even at lower levels in a campaign, your character probably hasn't decided their alignment yet, right? They probably don't know where their morals stand in huge scale. I do think that alignments inform a lot of things, right? I think there's a lot of description about who and what and how someone or something operates in the description of its alignment, but I also don't necessarily like the idea that they are a complete binding, right? Just because someone starts out lawful evil as a villain, they could easily, right? Like, they could be a politician. Corvosa, where running Curse of the Crimson Throne now, is a lawful evil city. There's a lot of devil worship, Asmodean worship in the city. That's not a bad thing. That's just lawful evil is how government works. But it is entirely possible that someone who starts there could then migrate to chaotic evil if they find, if when they find their power and they find their, their taste for, their taste for blood or something. I don't necessarily like them as shackles, but I definitely like them as descriptors.
I like what Grant said in chat about how alignments really are mostly for deities, because deities are hard set.
Well, Eric also alluded to that in his comment, in the previous, and I think that they're both right when it comes to looking at, structure and, archetypes. I think that makes complete sense. But for the players, it really, in a lot of ways, it just says this is who you are, this is what you're going to do, and takes away a lot of, for lack of a better description, or player agency. It doesn't give them the freedom to do something really bad, and then deal with the consequences in the game versus it being a mechanical deal with the consequences kind of a thing, right?
So one of the things that 5th edition did that I really did not like was when you're picking a race, it says most half orcs are chaotic evil or whatever.
Right.
Most half elves are lawful neutral or whatever, and it assigns them per race. And I don't understand why they did that, and I feel like that takes a lot of that kind of player choice out.
I also never
from the deities.
I also never liked the idea that, like, for some reason, D&D later editions decided that you could only be a paladin of lawful good gods. Like, you couldn't be any sort of holy warrior of any other god.
They have that now. You're wrong. There's unholy clerics and death clerics now. They've added them in as villainous classes, and they have oathbreakers as well. So
right, that's probably Unearthed Arcana, which I don't ever look at because I'm lazy.
No Xanthars for you.
I already bought 4 copies.
Fuck you. I don't even have one yet.
Yeah, neither do I. Did you get a special edition at least?
I'm gonna go pick that up in a couple days, yeah.
I hate you
so much.
I hate you so much.
I think we're on the same page. Our hate is for you, buddy.
Yep.
But
your pun damage automatically goes down to 0.
So the thing is, the thing about that, I think it's Apocalypse World that started the whole trend of just talking about motivations and not talking about, and talking about them in the guise of very strict structures like alignment or very strict structures about belief systems. It's, I think they started with, you've just got a couple of moves, and these are the moves, and those moves are based on motivations, and those motivations are just based on this is who the person is when you define them as an NPC, or this is, and so I think that as long as you take a little bit of time in advance and say this person's a politician, but they're a corrupt politician, and you structure those, that person could fall into lawful evil, they could fall into lawful neutral, any one of these. It's not limiting, and factor is what frustrates me. And as in talking about the changes to 5th edition, it's just like, it's whole races being structured that way makes it even more frustrating because it's incredibly limiting.
Yeah.
I'm totally on the other end of the fence, of course, because I love the fact that races are defined by their alignment, because if you look at, like, elves is the best example of this. You go to Arvindor and the gods from there, and everything just kind of descends into Toril and everything. So I've been doing a lot of reading on AO lately and Average Rail in the worlds before they split and whatnot, and the elves being pieces of their deity essentially, and having that flow through their bloods, through their veins, that's what their hierarchy is all about, that's what their royalty is all about, and being as close to their god. You see that in Kryn as well, the elves of Paladine and whatnot. So I like having those set lines for NPCs, but not for characters. For characters, that's the whole fun of being a character, is breaking the norm, but you can't break the norm if there is no norm,
Well, right, but that's a cultural thing versus a racial thing, right? And the changes, specifically are racial in 5th edition. As a cultural thing, Kryn is a great example because there are so many cultural specifics that go into all the different, essentially races and sects and all of that, right? Kinders are fundamentally, chaotic good or chaotic neutral, right? Depending on
shits.
I love Kinders. I love Kinders.
You're
so
gonna have to
much.
leave.
Hasselhoff Burfoot is probably one of my all-time favorite characters because at his heart, he is in no way near the Hobbit that is the star of the story as in Lord of the Rings, but he is very much Merry or Pippin in a lot of ways. in the Lance stories, and I loved that. I loved that good heart, but always something else. And it always
always hope that Lord Soth would find that little fucker and just like stuff him in a backpack and throw him in a river somewhere.
You and I can't be friends. Sorry.
We're just no.
I don't think any DMs can be friends. I don't think that's ever been the case.
You just have to roll for it, okay?
And there's always something. There's always the one thing.
Can I get advantage on that roll, please?
Did you nuke charisma? Is that what happened? Oh man. So we had we've been kind of really rambling on those topics, and I love the alignment topic mostly because it's one that everyone says has been done to death, but I still think there's ground to tread there, and I still like treading the ground because I think there's a lot of good philosophy.
I like talking about it as DMs. I mean, that's the whole point of the show, is so many different things. I mean, for me, we're always going to harp back to D&D, but I love hearing from other systems because you can pull in stuff from other systems and other things in the world and bring them in and make your story better. I love the topic that we had of sitting down before a campaign starts and like what happens when shit happens, you know? Like I learn a lot from this show that I take every week into my own show, and I hope to continue to do so. Except
Absolutely.
for you. You can't tell who I'm pointing at.
Do you guys want to, because you guys brought some topics with you, do you want to talk about those, or do you guys want, because we're going to be going for about another hour, do you want to carry viewer questions?
I think we kind of, the one that I wanted to talk about was the prominence of narrative driven games versus stat driven games in the hobby and the way that that's changed things. But I think we've already actually touched on that kind of quite a bit today in this conversation. So I'm all right with us kind of skipping that one.
Well, I think there's actually a point that we can have. Or there's a conversation that I was kind of hoping Eric would also jump on with us today at some point. But it would have to happen next week. But it relates to a couple things that we've talked about, which is the act of running a show versus the act of playing at the table, and how different versus grabbing. And so we don't have to touch on that. So that's one we can save for another time.
Yeah,
but but on the narrative versus the mechanics driven, the one thing I will say is that I think that also the context of whether you're playing at home or streaming it has a lot of impact on the way that you would approach that particular question, because the viewers are so much a part of the conversation now. They become so much a part of your game once you start streaming it, right? Once you get an audience, all of a sudden you're the whole scope and intent of your game changes, and even sometimes in very stats driven and crunchy mechanical systems, for game systems, it's almost more worth stepping back from those, allow the character and stuff to take over.
I love this topic.
That's
opening up that fourth wall to the Twitch people. Yeah.
That's actually an interesting conversation, and I think I may have mentioned this last week, but it's the reason that when I started streaming, it was a Pathfinder game, because I wasn't playing 5th edition at that point. I was still, 5th edition was out, but I was playing Pathfinder because I had been playing Pathfinder, and I hadn't really had a reason for me to switch to 5th edition, save for the fact that I started playing with Encounter Roleplay and other people and kind of DMing there, and I had to learn it. But I started with Pathfinder, and Pathfinder's a very crunchy system, and one of the things that I feel like I learned right away was that the crunch didn't play as well. Right? It bogged things down, and I felt like the pace of the episodes wasn't as good, and the people weren't as engaged as they would be if we were just kind of breezing through the mechanics in a simpler system. And so this may be a controversial, this may be a less prolific view, but I believe that when I run a game on stream, the game is almost secondary to the entertainment.
Yeah. Right. And this is where I know I'm gonna make Laura mad about this. I don't care about ammo. I don't care about magic components. I don't care about encumbrance.
Hold on. I want an addendum to that.
One more time for you fucker.
I want to add an addendum to that. I never track magic spell components, but I love describing spell components in the usage and casting of the spells. Because if you've never looked at them before, I defy you to describe someone casting a fireball and using that little bit of bat guano in a way that seems cool.
Graceland Magier fucking did it. He talked about rolling it around in his hands as he like lit it up, and it's like that's a fucking wizard. Someone who's literally willing to get into the shit to cast their spells. Like
what you just described was awesome and narrative and beautiful, right? That description of him rolling around in his hands and
I don't remember the exact fucking passage, okay? Shoot me.
It's the description of it versus the, all right, well, I gotta remove, one slot of bat guano from my pouch.
How many? When was the last time we saw some bats, guys?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is, I want to bring into the roleplay people finding those materials. Where the fuck do you go to get bat guano? Who's your bat guano fucking dealer? Like.
So that's the thing. If it's bat guano, right? If it's something that's going to cost a player 50 copper, they're going to go to a store and find it, and it's not a big event. If it's a 50 gold black pearl that's needed for this spell component, at that point I'm going to draw a line and go, all right, how did you get that? Where the fuck did that come from? We need to talk about this a little bit more.
Or like
there is a line.
Hero's Feast is a spell that higher level players love throwing out. It requires 1,000 gold piece golden bowl that you have to use, and it's used up every time. So you have to be like, where did you get the bowl?
Right. So there's a line there. Like if you've got arrows of dragon slaying, all right, I'm going to probably make you keep track of the numbers of arrows of dragon slaying that you have. But if you have 150 regular arrows, I don't care. That's fine. I assume that you stock up somewhere along the way.
I like players keeping track of that stuff because I feel like it makes the character more human, so to speak. And I say human, so to speak, because obviously not everything is human. But when was the last time your character drank out of their water skin? What was the last ration that you had? What did it taste like? You get it.
I think there are games for that though. Like Torchbearer is the game for that. D&D, it just gets in the way of the story. For me.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I think it's a lot of DMs, and myself included, look at this as a question of, does delving into that little, let's say it takes 30 seconds to speak a sentence about what the last ration you ate was. Is anything about the story made more interesting because of it?
Which is why I think that they cheapened out and started using arcane foci and different feats and stuff like that, so you don't have it, so you can make that. And I consider that cheaping out. But I think for you guys, you are also playing where your campaigns end and your campaigns come to a natural end. I, for the most part, are playing campaigns that I intend to go on for years or forever. And so that's why those things are a little bit more important to me. If you're trying to get a story told and from point A to point B, then sure, I completely agree with you. But over a long, 3, 5, 7 year campaign, those things every now and then you need to keep track of, I feel.
Right, but we're talking about, but this is in the context of breaking that fourth wall and making sure that the audience is entertained. As long as the audience is involved in some way, shape, or form, the circumstances of tracking arrows, individual arrows, or bat guano or any of those things, I'm not sure how much the audience is going to be involved or want to be involved in listening to that versus the quest for acquiring the specific dagger or the specific piece of bones that you can then shape into arrowheads that will then become the one that slays this particular beast, that kind of thing. Any of those, it just has to be played up in a way so that the audience is engaged and not just deciding to to wander off to something else or wander away, and then they come back and they're missing something because it was a mechanical moment versus a dramatic or a narrative moment.
Yeah, that's also where I like to introduce fun NPCs though, where you go and buy the shit from, not just have it explain to me how you get it, but throw in that. I think that's a good point for I completely agree with everything you're saying. Add in #comic relief with those characters.
Yeah, and you're right. So those are points where I think that comic relief make a great deal of sense, especially if you start playing in the Avatar: Last Airbender, cabbage vendor that always continues to appear in every single scene and gets his cabbage, cart kind of tossed, up, and it's that comedic, kind of just self-deprecating or deprecating moment, bringing the characters down just a little bit, but in a really good way. And
there's an addition here, and I think it's really interesting. Grant R. Ellis in chat brings this up. He says, "I delegate bookkeeping to one player that wants to do it, and so if one player sort of expresses interest in tracking inventory and resources and stuff like that, that's fantastic." But I ran into this problem when I DM'd Jade Region. If Jade Region is a Pathfinder adventure path, specifically, it involves wagon train travel from like one side of the world to the other, and it gives you rules for the management, the purchasing, the stocking, the employing of people in, and the resources and stuff in your caravan, right? You can play this as a spreadsheet game and manage and track all these things. But it also says if none of the players in the party are interested in doing that, then fucking don't do it. Because it's just going to be not fun for them. Right? So if there's no player in your group if you ask your group, hey, is anyone interested in keeping track of all the resources and stuff, and no one really wants to do it, then it's like, well, now when you do it, they're just not going to be having fun. And you're just actively going to be pushing a not fun part of the game on them.
Yeah, I think there are opportunities for I mean, there are definitely players.
Sorry, my boyfriend has come, and every time I'm doing a show, he'll come and just make a face at me to try and get me to break my concentration, and every now and then.
Don't break character. Don't do it.
It's too late. He's got me.
I
won't tell you the other things he's done.
Whoa. Okay. I think that there are opportunities for people who love the mechanics aspect of it. I think if there's a balancing and there's a way to do it so that it happens, in a way for the characters to be funny and for the players to enjoy it and for the audience to enjoy it, I think it's great. I agree. I think that there has to be something that kind of helps fill that all in. And yeah. Anyways.
So bringing this back to, and I think this only works with streaming, and particularly it's something I've done with like charity events, is to make sure you're meticulously tracking those things like water and like arrows, and then when they run out, having people donate to be able to refill those, especially if they're somewhere like in the middle of a dungeon where they're not able to like go out and get more arrows. So that works well as a way to get chat involved, especially if you're doing something like charity events or something.
Charity events for sure. But a lot of DMs are very split on this topic on whether or not you should be able to donate to affect the game in any way, shape, or form. I, of course, am all for it because I need to make fucking money. Like, I'm putting the hours into the show to do this. But I think there's a point where it starts to really just break the game and not become fun.
I don't necessarily know, but then again, I had this really weird thing, and I think this may be just a Twitch culture thing. When I started, I was working on a new show, and like every other channel, we have donations for nat 20s and stuff. Not like the wild magic surge. We talked about this last week. Not the wild magic surges. Not the like you can add anything you want, but natural 20s, inspirations, tarot cards, that kind of thing. And I posted on Reddit once in the D&D thing, and man, Reddit went nuts, as if like the fact that there was a donation aspect that could be engaged was like this big scoop that they had uncovered. If it was like a Ponzi scheme or something, and I'm like, have you guys never been on Twitch before?
Reddit's D&D and Twitch and anything that's outside of like, I feel like rules as written, like just don't go talk to them about it.
Yep.
Because you'll just get shit all over.
You lost me at Reddit. Just saying, like
I don't use any other social medias, any other thing. I don't know. I don't go to any of those sites, so I don't.
There are some good like subreddits for DM utilities and stuff, but anything that's like a default subreddit like D&D or like close to a default subreddit, just stay the fuck out of. That's how you use Reddit.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being a D&D purist. In fact, I have a lot of respect for the people that know black from white. But in the whole topic of once you bring it to Twitch, it's just a whole It's
a
Twitch.
it's a completely
Twitch
different thing.
D&D. It's no
Yeah.
longer D&D. It's Twitch D&D. You know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that actually brings up a separate topic that I'd love to talk about eventually, but and the idea that viewers can affect the game is exciting for the viewers because they can help the player that they really are passionate about, or the character that they're really passionate about, or in rare cases they can throw things against that player, or that character, and it causes an uncertain outcome or uncertain circumstance that nobody was anticipating previously. And as long as it gets played immediately, it's like, wow, okay,
Right.
new game, exciting. All of a sudden, dramatic steps up, and that viewer is engaged. The rest of the viewers are engaged because all of a sudden the game is changing and they're seeing something completely different.
You know what I equate this to? Like verbatim, the Hunger Games. You get fucking sponsors into the Hunger Games. I use this exact terminology, and that's it. I'm so glad that you said that, because it's exactly what it is. People watching this literal D&D Hunger Game type thing and deciding, oh, I love this character, I fucking hate that guy, and doing something to get actively involved. And you are getting sponsors. It's no longer donations. You're sponsoring different characters.
That's kind of exactly what we did when we did this, like, even to the point that it was like in game, the players were on a basically a televised dungeon run, and people could send them gifts that were watching in the audience. It was essentially Hunger Games, and it works very well.
Firebringer brings up, and this is a weird thing that I didn't expect to happen, but because Writhing Moon is a horror game and everything the players fight is horrible, for some reason the audience has decided that they will never do anything without nat 20s. So like every swing, everything that happens in combat is a nat 20 just so the players don't die, which is weird considering we established in the universe pretty early on that if they die, they're just gonna wake up in this dream realm. And I mean, everything's horrible, but but the audience it's interesting because the audience has gotten so engaged, and it shows how much they like the characters, and it shows how much they have kind of bought into the story and just want to see it to its conclusion, right? Because if an audience member is saying, here's some money specifically so this player can make it through this next combat alive, that essentially is saying, I want to see this character complete their story. I want to see them, become fulfilled. I want to see where they go and what they do.
I see it as divine influence, in the same way that you shout out to Tempest right before you swing your hammer or whatever. Your prayer is heard somewhere out in the universe. I also want to touch upon not just having fans and money affect the story, but things like fan art and fan stories, and how important that is. And that's something that we didn't get when we were kids. We didn't get fan art about the characters. It's so crazy to see these people role play these characters and bring them to life, and then to see someone who has gotten so in love with the character and they capture that perfect like facial moment or that heartbreak or something like that. And that to me honestly means more than donations. There, I said it out. It means more than donations.
Absolutely. We haven't had a ton of it, but the little bit of fan art that we've gotten is just fucking like, it's weird to see that people like, again, and I think the people in Critical Role and other big podcasts and streams have said this too. Like, it's something I don't think any of us are prepared for, seeing other people get involved in these worlds and these characters as we are.
Yeah. And it's a validation thing, right? That you're doing something that is creating content that other people are invested in. And it's just that shock of like, I just set out to tell a good story. I didn't realize that all these people were going to fall in love with these characters or these events or this world. And it's just that validation that, holy shit, this is a lot of fun for a lot of people in different ways.
So I think the reason that I started watching Critical Role because I was curious what it was all about after getting into 5e. I fell in love with the story, and I fell in love with all the players. I actually was at the first live event that they did down in LA. My favorite part of Critical Role every single time is the fan art, because the fan art is where they the fans just come up and recreate these images in their head, and they're so loving and it's so endearing, and it's fantastic to see. And it's so rare that it happens for anybody else. So when it does happen, like we've had a couple in 6 and 20, when it does happen, it's unbelievable. It's exciting. It's overwhelming, because it's like, okay, going back to the point of, yeah, these people are actually incredibly passionate about what's going on with these characters, and it's unbelievable. So yeah.
Can I just add something onto that I think will amplify what you said a little bit? We see there are a lot of passionate people that talk about Critical Role, just like we have a lot of passionate people in our chat who come out and watch our games, right? But for example, I remember some of the first fan art that we got for some of our shows was by people who had never said anything in chat before. Right? Like they had never been, I'm sure they were watching, but they had never really expressed their enjoyment or their engagement and stuff. And then it's like, it's just this amazing creation just kind of shows up in your inbox or in Twitter or something after the show. And you're like, I wish I had known that this person was here, but I'm so glad that they are. Right?
Lurkers are 90% of Twitch, so let's get real. It's okay. You don't need people to be actively involved in chat to like the story.
But what I'm saying is you don't be you have no idea how many people you're reaching and how many people are just growing silently passionate about what you're doing, right? And it's so interesting and so reaffirming and so kind of touching to actually see that, like when they actually decide to come out and say something, and that something is fucking amazing, like artwork or stories or whatever they do for that they don't have to do, that they've gone out of their way to create.
Yeah, it's just exciting, and it's awe-inspiring, and in some cases somebody wrote like a 3 or 4 line poem that changed the way that I decided to run one of the characters, because they tweeted it at us during an episode, and it was just like, wow, this is, it changed my perception of the game, because their perception of the game was really interesting. It was very different. And it goes back to what was being said earlier, where we didn't experience this, right? There were, as kids, as adults, as young adults, as, being fans, we didn't experience a lot of this stuff. This fascination with people expressing their love, and have a direct connection impact with that, right? It was a very distant thing, and now it's like it's almost part of the whole experience. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We're coming up on by the way, we're coming up about half hour left, and so I dropped in chat already, guys. First of all, if you guys are just joining us or if you've been hanging out, thank you so much for hanging out with us. You guys have been amazing in chat. I'm so sorry that we haven't, we've been kind of having our own conversations. I promise we've been reading the chat and
I've been interacting like every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm awful about interacting with chat when I stream. I just, I try my best to read it, but I don't type a lot. But thank you guys so much. If you guys are joining us, you can see down at the bottom, we are hanging out. This is our weekly show called The DM's Table, where we have a rotating panel of amazing Twitch DMs hanging out and talking about our experiences, our thoughts, and just how we view gaming. Hopefully to teach ourselves and to help you guys learn a little bit about the craft and become amazing DMs yourself, like we one day hope to be.
I'm just here to piss everybody off.
Or break books.
Just
break books on stream.
Writing in books with freaking permanent
You
markers.
guys are like a part of it forever now, though. You guys are on the introduction here. Look at this, the DM's table right here, permanent ink. Do you like it? Oh my god.
Although I like that idea of having like and maybe we need to do this at the next TwitchCon or something, having a player's handbook or a DM's guide that gets signed by all the DMs and then
I actually had Grant sign all my my books.
Someone asked me to sign a book at TwitchCon, and I have no idea why. It's so weird. It's the weirdest feeling. I'm sitting, I did it, but I'm like, what? Why though?
Autographs are my favorite part of conventions. As a narcissist, it's like, yes, let me sign my
signature
name.
looks like chicken scratch, and no one would ever be able to read it, so I kind of would feel really bad doing it.
Yep, I'm the same way.
Oh man. Well, hopefully, maybe the next time a convention rolls around that we're all gonna be at, maybe we'll do something live. I don't know who's gonna be at Gen Con this year. Who's not gonna drive to the wrong state?
I want to make Gen Con
going
every
to
year,
Gen Con.
but it's one that never happens.
I just missed fuck, what con was it just now this weekend?
BlizzCon?
No, not
Yeah.
BlizzCon. That
Game Hole?
too.
Something
Game
or other.
Hole. There we go.
I always hear that, and I'm like, that's not the right word.
Game Hole. Yeah, that's they get to do some rebranding
I spew
on
the
that.
DMing out of my game hole. That's what I do. No.
I'm not allowed to talk right now. Just no. Just gonna cover my ears and.
Guys, we're gonna take your questions and topics in chat. Of course, we're gonna talk about whatever you guys want us to talk about. Make sure if you're hanging out and you have not already, you drop those questions. Either tag me at Exploding Dice, or you just put a big question in front of it, and we'll see it. I'm gonna scroll back a little bit. Actually, Koros RPG asked this earlier, and he was I wanted to spend a little bit of time on it. One-on-one sessions. Have you guys ever done them? Are you interested in them?
I actually, because we had this topic already today, getting 4 people in the same place at the same time. 1, super fucking hard, super annoying sometimes. 2, sometimes being in a player with a group of other people, you're sitting there waiting like, when the fuck is it my turn? And I hated that as a kid. So me and another DM, we only did one-on-one sessions, and it was a great way to like propel the storyline through a world. And that's actually what my 8 Legs of Loth, my Menzo Branson, started as, but I didn't expect to like jump in so hard, and so I had to start doing group sessions and stuff like that. I needed to invite more players, so yes, awesome, love one-on-one stuff.
I've never done them, only because they just never seem to be something that interested me. Like, I probably would be fine with them. It's always been like, hey, do I get one person and then play a game, or do I get a bunch of people and play a game? I'd rather just do more stuff, I guess.
I think if it's a super like RP heavy setting and setup for like a one-on-one with somebody, that would work. If you're fleshing out backstory or character motivations, then that works well. Can't see doing like a one-person dungeon crawl.
It's got to be heavy
successful.
RP,
Yeah.
like deep, like internal soul searching kind of shit, like no, you can't just be like room 1, room 2.
Right, they just seem super fucking boring.
Yeah, it would get tedious after a while, but it's definitely I love it. Like I'm getting childhood flashbacks, flashbooks right now. I love it. Like it's just such a great way to have those monologues.
Yeah, it's a great way to set up story in a lot of ways, or a great way to catch a character up if for whatever reason they're off they're off for a week or whatever. And maybe there was a split of the party, or there was a circumstance where they could leave them behind, and it's how the character actually got back to the party, or that. Most of the time that I've ever used them is actually to start a game. I will work with all of the character or the players to make their characters, and then I will do individual stories to get into the point of that tavern or that crossroads or that event, wherever they are, just to kind of give them more than 5 minutes of setup. And so they have at least a little bit of insight as to what they're doing when they walk in the door, wherever that door is, or whatever that situation is.
Yeah, I think that would work well for Blades and getting those character motivations together. Like, why did they join the crew? What are they after? Like that kind of deeper stuff. Especially at the very beginning, like before you actually get into the show or into the game with everybody. Like building that history would work well as a one-on-one kind of thing.
I don't know how popular I'm going to be by saying this, but I actually enjoy some of the things that ItMeJP does with roleplay. And the first Blade session that they did was amazing. John Harper was running the game, and one of the characters basically took over a good portion of the session and introduced himself to each of the other characters and acquiring and building the crew. And it was
I remember that.
Really well done, right? It was just like I think it was In Control. I can't remember his name otherwise, but it was
Jeff?
Yeah,
he's really good.
But his character on Blades was great, and just the way that he just took control of the situation and began to set it all up, I would love to be at the same table with that guy just because of that session. It was just
I
like,
have been at the same table as that guy. I got to play on the Misclicks D&D Seaboard, and he was a talking duck man. And that is why in my campaign we have the Underduck. It is a ode to the one time I got to play with him, and it was fucking awesome.
now I'm just jealous. Beer.
Yeah, I've never done one-on-one sessions. It's just I get the concept of sitting down with players and doing them before the game. It's just the organizing one game with players is hard enough. Organizing a one-on-one, like, it's hard enough for me to organize like a Skype call or something when I'm trying to get when I'm working on a new cast, right? Like, getting them to come back for a session always seems like too much of a challenge. But I do support them, definitely, if that's the way that you do your intros or something. Absolutely. Durkin, I'm gonna direct this question only to Lorelania, and no one else chime in on this.
The Dark Elves are dark-skinned because there's the Illithiri, and they were actually in Arvindor, and they're a different race of elves, and they were sent underground, not just because of Loth and her evil ways, but when Loth, Arianshi, betrayed Coralon, all of the elves got together and they casted a great spell to send all the elves into the Underdark, but there's actually other non-dark-skinned elves that were sent to the Underdark that were captured by this clerical spell, and over time the Farseres continued to change them. The end.
And there you go.
Would you just do an entire stream where you just talk about that stuff? Because I'm very curious now.
I feel like she does already.
I go to sleep listening to audiobooks about Dark Elven lore. Like, right now, I'm in the Arvindor Elves of Evermeet, and
I didn't even know there was such a thing as audiobooks about Dark Elven lore.
So, just a quick note on that, since I was able to power through that so quick. Arianshi was just as fucked up when she was a regular elf goddess. She was fucked in the head, and it is great. She was a little cunt.
No, seriously, tell us how you really feel.
I'm not a Drizzt fangirl. Drizzt is a little jerk, by the way. Don't even get me started on that little punk ass.
Have I ever mentioned that Tia is one of my favorite people?
I'm going to need to drink next episode.
I think we're
man.
we're gonna need a drinking game that's associated with this, right?
Yeah. It's gonna be good.
Sorry, I'm scrolling through. Retrovirum, what's going on? Says, have you ever brought something to the table as a DM that you weren't exactly confident in, whether from the start or on the spot? As far as, I'm assuming that means as far as rules or ways you run things, not necessarily like plot details.
I think it could go both ways. I definitely have a plot that I ran as like a one-shot with a group of players that were murder hobos that was super RP heavy, and I was like, I don't know how well this is going to go over, but I really want to run this idea, so fuck it, I'm throwing it up them anyway. And other than one guy who just kind of was an asshole, it worked really well. But it was one of those that, like, I don't know how well this group is going to be able to handle it, because we go back to that player maturity thing of, are they going to get away from the dice for long enough to be impacted by the storyline, or are they just going to say fuck it and kill everybody in the village? Which they didn't, and I was kind of surprised, but it worked well. So I think it definitely can go either way.
Yeah, I mean, I've brought a lot. I always do things that I'm not confident in, right? Whether it be a plot that I'm not 100% confident the player's going to bite or going to buy into or figure out, or it's just a way that I kind of want to handle things. Sometimes it's a really cool dungeon idea or a puzzle, and I'm just sitting there thinking, like, I'm going to do this, but I am almost positive that my players aren't going to pick up on it, or it's not going to play out nearly as cool at the table as it is in my head. And yeah, I don't remember. It says, yeah, the question didn't really involve like what do you do about that, but I think taking yourself out of your comfort zone and experimenting is kind of an important part of being a DM, right? If you run the exact same tricks and the exact same setup and the exact same way that you prep and plan and do things every session, I think it's going to start getting very stagnant and very boring. And mixing it up and trying new things is how we grow as creators.
Playtesting is super important. I have
Yeah.
2 video playlists on literally before I even did my first, like what I call session 0, I did 50 playtesting episodes on how to balance my game with the Twitch audience, because like we spent most of the session today talking about is Twitch changes D&D. Okay, well, how am I going to make sure that fits and that works? And so I have tech alpha and alpha testing for my campaign. And it's just, we tried everything from donations to like follow alerts to stuff like that and see what works. And I never knew what was going to work and what was going to stick and what didn't. And it was just play it by the seat of your pants. So I'm never confident going into a session. There's never a session that I start where I go, I've totally got this today. Every new session is just as much an adventure for me as a DM as I hope it is for the players.
The only time I ever go into a session being like, I'm pretty sure that I know exactly what is going to happen today and I know what's going to go on is when they're like in the middle of a dungeon and I've already got the dungeon like and all the enemies and stuff laid out. And so I just know that it's exploring in combat and there's nothing I need to worry about there as far as like where they might go and the path they might take and the tricks they might try, right? But any other time, especially when it comes to like big social set pieces or big like faction movements and things like that, it's always like, fuck.
Yeah, I don't think I ever go into a session feeling confident, and if I do, the session goes badly because it catches me off guard. I tend to do a significant amount of prep, although less prep these days than previously, specifically because I always am caught off guard when I do too much prep. And it's not just, players make a decision left versus right. It's players make a decision that goes along the path, but then they add nuances or pieces to it that I'm just like, I don't know. So I always go in with the idea that it's going to go off the rails or it's going to go in a direction I wasn't expecting. So I'm just going to be as hyper focused on those elements, which means that oftentimes I don't necessarily, I think going back to the original question, I don't bring in things, anything I bring to the table, I don't feel confident about. Anything I bring to the table, I'm always uncertain about how it's going to play. Even if it's a guaranteed win with somebody at the table, I don't know if it's going to play for the audience. I don't know if it's going to play for the rest of the players. I can only hope that the table is trusting me enough and that the audience is trusting me enough at the end of the day that what I'm trying, while it may not land correctly, that we are trying to do something, amazing or different or whatever. And that's that social contract with your audience at the end of the day.
You know what is really surprising about Twitch? When it comes to playing video games, Twitch chat, assholes. Like, unrelenting fucking assholes. But when it comes to D&D, the amount of understanding and compassion when it comes to if something doesn't go right or something doesn't go well, it blows my mind. If we could take the D&D state of mind and apply it to the rest of Twitch, I would be so thankful.
So I am assuming you do a lot, because you do a lot of interacting with non-D&D streamers, right? Because you grew up in the non-role like before there was a role-playing segment on Twitch at all.
I was World of Warcraft and Heroes of the Storm and all that, and that's where I primarily have sunk most of my time on Twitch. I'm new to the D&D community.
Right.
I'm not new to D&D, but new to the community for sure.
I don't know about these guys. I only started on Twitch in the role-playing category, and I don't even when I stream games, I don't consider myself to be venturing outside of that audience. But so when I talk to other streamers and other content creators, some are fairly disheartened with Twitch as a community, and it's one of the things I have to explain to them is like, no, kind of like, people say like Houston isn't Texas. It's sort of like the D&D category on Twitch isn't Twitch. It's a very, very different demographic, right? It's like almost no spillover.
We have such a nice little corner of the internet here. Like, it's very tiny over here.
I have banned maybe like 5 trolls in 3 years from my channel. And it's just something you don't see in the community. Because the people that come in are there to get invested in the story and the characters and what you're playing, and not for any other reason.
I was gonna go with a low blow, but I was gonna say people that come into the D&D community have at least read a book from start to finish.
Right.
You know, like, they have
At least the
proven
player's
that.
handbook.
Wow.
You get people. Well, you get some people in other parts of the Twitch community that just, have they. I can't finish the sentence and be legal.
Open bobs.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
What's interesting about that, though, is some of the more popular, Critical Role, some of the stuff that goes on Hyper RPG, they have a pretty toxic audience sometimes. Matt has talked about repeatedly on Twitter how he has dealt with some of the feedback coming from the critter community and how, aggressive or toxic it can be. And that's a shame because it's hitting that Twitch demographic that's like, well,
I think that's a problem of scale because
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely due to success.
So
Because you can browse by number, right?
When you see Critical Role putting up near 40,000 viewers every episode, no other channel in the D&D category does that. Right?
Absolutely.
So that means, and even if you added them all together, you wouldn't even be remotely close to that. So that means that there's a lot of those people that are coming from somewhere else.
Well, absolutely, right. And a lot of people, Mike and I talk about our differences of opinion about how Critical Role has affected D&D, just in general, how it has affected, the playing of role-playing games on Twitch and as a specific. But at the end of the day, it has brought more of our audience. More people are going to be discovering us because of that, and we're going to be coming into this world where there's more and more support and love for that type of experience. But I go back to the point of the trolls, and yes, it's about the scale. But it's also about it goes back to that whole Reddit, type of audience as well. They're tapping into more of the core, very hardcore D&D audience, and that's where that's coming from as well. Is they're getting toxic about the roles, they're getting toxic about you're not playing the rules. Kind of the situation.
As a little bit of an aside there, one of the most interesting conversations I had with Matt was when we talked about sort of doing the sort of the more freeform or rules light or narrative D&D, and he was like, well, I can't, because, as soon as you make a mistake, you get 500 people sending, spamming you with that you missed a roll, and it's like, so you can't go off book, you can't do anything there, and I'm like, that's kind of the worst feeling as a DM. That's gotta be
so frustrating. Yeah,
well,
every time you make a mistake, it's just like,
yeah. Liam has run a couple of one-shots, and then I guess they're doing one-shots now that they're in break between whatever the previous, the cast was, the Vox Machina and whatever they're doing next. But Liam has run a couple of one-shots, and he, it's come up in their talks, their Vox Machina thing. He's like, people are asking him about, well, how do you handle when, people get toxic? And he's like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, right. But it's very obvious that him and Matt have two very, very different takes on the concept of we're playing a game, right? Matt is very, very driven by keeping his audience engaged and keeping his numbers, his viewership up. Whereas Liam very clearly says, like, I don't give a shit if this is in the rules or not. We're playing a game.
I love Impious's gift for that.
Yeah.
It's so fucking spot on.
That is
Guess
in
I
my
won't do
bot.
this again.
That is in my bot for house rules. And just like anytime somebody bitches about the way that I rule something, I just throw that in.
This is actually
that is so great. I love that.
This is actually a really interesting segue into the next question HB Fox drops. He says, as a DM, how do you deal with a player who is big on rules lawyering when you're trying to push RP-driven plot and points? And I guess, how do you deal with that as a player? So, like, do you guys kind of, like... Because I think we all, like, fall in some shade on the side of, like, the rules don't necessarily matter too much if the storytelling is great.
Oh yeah, the rule of cool.
And I go, shh, and then I just continue playing. It's really just something that I don't really tolerate well.
You and I are so polar opposite because I love rules lawyers.
No.
I love when players are like, obviously there's a certain point where it has to stop, but I love to listen to hear their point of view and be like, why?
So here's
Why?
here's an amazing thing, and I can't shit on rules lawyers, even if so. I'm horrible with the rules in any system. I tend to almost forget them completely until someone reminds me. But in my Pathfinder home game that I was talking about last week, my players really like engaging with the rules, because engaging with the rules and their feats and stacking their powers and their weapons and stuff makes them feel powerful, and I don't want to take that away from them. But what I also know is, so this happened in our last session, they have an NPC with him who is a level 13 barbarian. Barbarians have a lot of powers, and when they rage, their stats change fairly dramatically, and with power attack and with all this shit, there's a lot of stuff going on in a barbarian's combat that I just don't even know off the top of my head. Like, I don't know any of this. So I literally turn to the player there, and I do this with spells, I do this with conditions, I do this with rules all the time, and I said, hey man, do you want to play this NPC so I don't have to? Because you have been playing a barbarian for the last 10 levels. You know, do you want to just take over this NPC in combat, and then you can do all that stuff, and I don't have to, and we won't have to slow the game down? And I love my players because when I forget a rule, or I forget a spell, the way a spell works, or a condition or something, they'll tell me, or they'll remind me, and it's not like in a shitty way. It's not like oh, you're the DM, you should remember. It's like, no, that's why they like the rules, is so they can kind of, when I can say, hey, how does grapple work? Oh, and they'll tell me, and it doesn't affect the game. I think
that's a great way to empower them. Yeah.
There's a place for that, but there's also a place where rule lawyers get in the way of the narrative because they want to argue about the way spell mechanics work for 10 fucking minutes, and I don't have time for that. And
right. There's a and that's it has happened in the same game when they ask me for a ruling on something. I'll read the spell. I'll say, this is the way I interpret it, and that's the way it'll apply at the moment. And then if I need more time or something, I'll tell them, hey, I'll get back to you. But we kind of accept that. But it's like, I like other people in the game that if I forget something, they can remind me and they can kind of keep me current, as long as they don't hold it against the DM, right? I think that's important, because knowing the rules empowers them, and I don't want to take that away from them.
I have a co-DM. I have two co-DMs, actually. One, Darkstalker, who is my 5th edition rules go-to guy. Shit that I don't know. Like, he knows the system inside out and backwards. And sometimes when they're on the show, he'll type something to be like, well, this is how it's supposed to happen. And I'll go, am I going to retroact this because of the new information that I have? Or am I going to apply that at a later and different time? And sorry, the boyfriend is doing the thing again. Damn it, I was in the middle of a good monologue. And I also have a world co-DM who, is a dark elf expert like myself. So I have 2 other voices that are helping me as a DM. Because a lot of people say I don't want the extra rules and everything else, but I like having more opinions on how to build the world. At the end of the day, I want to be able to say, okay, this is the decision I've made, and you have to go with it. But I love hearing, why do you want the spell to work like this? How come it's working like this for you? Can you give me a reasonable explanation as to why this is happening? And if they can, or if I don't like their thing, then they have to deal with that.
So, real quick, I'm just going to interject because I thought this was a really interesting question. Grant asked this earlier. If there was one published adventure path storyline,
I forgot about that one. I wanted to get to that one.
You recommend for a DM to look at, what would it be?
Ooh.
So I know my answer already.
Go for it.
So mine is the 2nd edition version of the Dancing Hut of Baba Yaga.
Okay.
Because it's fucking weird. And because it throws you into a lot of areas and situations that as a normal D&D game, you're not going to. There's a room in there where you have to fight Godzilla in a miniature town. There's a room in there that the sky opens up and sucks you off into space if you trigger a trap. Like, it just does such fun, weird shit that just kind of opens the DMs up to, like, this is the stuff you can do. And I think it's a fantastic adventure. It's one of my favorites, to be honest. So. And
now, was the question to introduce to teach a DM, or just?
No, just to look at.
Okay.
So I think for inspiration is the way that I took that.
Right.
I think Grant has been reading a bunch of adventures. I noticed on his Twitter he's been talking about reading a bunch of published and stuff. So I think he's just looking for more stuff to read.
Right. Well, he mentioned that he had looked at Curse of the Crimson Throne because that was Eric and I had talked about how that was our favorite one. Which one is that? It's you're moving it too much. Oh, Queen of the Demon one. Okay, Q1.
Right on that one, I will find you, and I will remove it.
Oh, I need to know because Grant Ellis actually gave this to me, and it's signed by someone named Don Crisp. Who is that?
No idea.
I don't know.
I don't know either. And I was like, "Is this worth something?" And he gave it to me. He also gave me the little lost statue that comes.
Donald Crisp is an English film actor. I literally that's what I just looked up on Wikipedia. I don't know. I don't think it's that guy.
That'd be a lot more valuable. Fuck.
I mean, considering he died in 1974.
I should have just trolled and been like, Gary Grogax? Like, who's that? Who is this? Impious just like trying to hide his shame with his hat. Like,
oh man,
he's like, I hate this fish so much.
My favorite adventure shit, aside from Curse of the Crimson Throne, is easily one of my favorites. I think one of the best things that the best published adventure paths ever is, well, a couple of them. Rise of the Runelords is very, very good. Curse of the Crimson Throne is better than that, and just about as good is Age of Worms. Are all very, very great. I don't know, man. Like, it really depends what kind of inspiration you're looking for, I think. Age of Worms is fucking great. Yeah, Mike, I agree. It is. It's one of my favorites.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if I've got to answer that question, there's actually two different paths that I would take, or there's two different paths that I would offer. One is, if you really want to talk about real amazing storytelling, go back to anything that Weiss or Hickman wrote together in first edition. I mean, specifically the Dragonlance 12 module set, those were amazing. Also going back and looking at the first edition Castle Ravenloft adventure.
Yeah.
And from a just storytelling and structure and how to play the game through essentially on rails in a very, very creative way, those are the systems that I would go with. But if you want to talk about game breaking shit, I'm going to go all the way back to 1980 and say Expedition to Barrier Peaks.
Barrier Peaks is really, really good. It is nuts, and
it breaks. So it literally breaks any group after that adventure. They can't go anywhere else because all of a sudden they've got powered armor, they've got laser swords, and they've got laser guns, and they fought all of these crazy things, and they're essentially mad. They essentially
you mean, sir, the term for laser sword, I believe, is lightsaber, is what you're looking for?
No, it's not. I see no lightsaber. That would be a copyright infringement. I see a psionic spirit blade.
Yeah,
sorry, every stream needs its mandatory Gamers 2 reference.
Yeah, it's so both of those are the almost the extreme examples of, at least in first edition. And I mean, I don't play with published campaigns anymore. I mean, I may run something like from one of the modern 5e books like Curse of Strahd, but I don't even do that anymore. I look at those for inspiration, and then I build the story out of that. But if I was going back and going to look at those specifically for elements of interest, for learning, those are the two paths that I would take, because they are so widely divergent, and they're way far back. Gary Gygax wrote some pretty crazy stuff from first edition, from AD&D, and most of his stuff breaks the game period anyways. But
Barrier Peaks was nuts. There was a lot of stuff back then. Oh, what was the other one? The serpent something. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
I don't know. I just had the first module. Let me look.
The S series. Am I remembering that correctly?
White Plume Mountain, Lost Caverns of
Tzankath.
Yeah.
And then
Blue Forest was S1 in that series. So
White Plume was also very good. Yeah, I'm trying to it's not fucking I don't remember, man. I'm gonna look this up and I'm gonna try and remember which one I'm looking for because this has been a very
Smooth, Laura. Wait, Dex. Dex.
Oh Lord. So why don't we take? I know because I know Impious had to bounce. So why don't we take one more question? If I can find it here, we'll take one more good question. Here, you guys didn't use the tag, so you made it hard to find. Okay. Well, I don't know if this is a question or that merits an answer, really. Darth Mole says, what about players with constantly low rolling dice? Rip?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Roll a new character?
Calithra, the first drow I brought into, it makes for good comic relief. It really does. You don't have to make a low rolling dice always be fucking the end of the world. My character was trying to catch a dagger and she kept on rolling shit, and the term banana dagger spawned from that because it was just like, whoa, I'm trying to show off, I suck. But yeah, it doesn't, just don't you don't have to kill them. You just
By the way, I remembered it wasn't S, it was the A series adventures against the slave lords. Those were also very, very good. They may need to be modernized a little bit, but there was a lot of good stuff in there. Also,
fail forward. I really like that expression. That's a good one.
Fail forward, yeah.
Fail forward.
Yeah, Mouse Guard is really good in that sense. So what I generally embrace the concept, even in D&D, of you may fail your roll, but the story in this scene still has to continue in some way. So it should be a ratcheting up of the consequences, right? So let's say there should never be a roll if there's no consequences to it, which means, let's say you're unlocking a door in a dungeon and you roll a 2. Well, I mean, it may take you a little while to do it, or maybe there's a wandering monster patrol that you hear coming around the corner, or maybe when you unlock the door, there's a loud kind of clanging sound echoing through the dungeon, and now everyone in nearby knows that you're breaking in. Like, the consequences escalate in some way.
We're not going to talk about my botched lockpicking roll at TwitchCon.
So I like the way that you described that, because the concept of fail forward is amazing. Lots of modern tabletop systems, the Star Wars system, Blades in the Dark, City of Mist, everything based off of the Apocalypse system, all of them talk about that in some way of dealing with consequence. But I like the idea of how you define it by saying the only time I ask for it, or the dice roll is all about the fact of when there could be consequences, right?
Mm-hmm.
That whole idea of, if you fail, there's something that's going to happen. If you succeed, there's something going to happen, and that need for the randomness to determine that is the important component, right? That need for uncertainty that we need to add for the mystery of the and that's hard. That's a hard concept for, I think, a lot of players to grasp onto, regardless of what setting they're in. Is the idea that it's okay to fail. It's okay to screw up, because it builds a better. You may fail your swing, and not take out the goblin that subsequently then attacks and murders your friend or whatever. But that builds some great story. That's just it's getting the characters to the players to realize that that's an important element of even if you're just sitting at the table and you're not doing it on Twitch, just building that story. It's
when they make the roll, right? If they roll a failure and it's like, okay, nothing happens, I guess we just try again, right? Like, you've kind of essentially just wasted time rolling the dice at that point. There's no reason to be doing it. But if when something fails, you say, okay, as you're doing this, you hear footsteps coming around the corner. It's like, well, now there's stakes, right? Now the situation is worse than it was before, and you can still move forward. The players can still take action. They can still continue. It's just that, now they have some kind of They're risking something that they weren't a second ago. And you can even if you really want to get narrative with it, you can ask the players what the stakes are, right? You can ask them to create their own stakes for failure. Mouse Guard is really, really interesting about that because, again, I said in Mouse Guard, when you tie on an opposed check, you can choose to break the tie in your against you. You can choose to essentially lose the roll, right? And define how that happens. It does, it rewards you later, but at the moment it means the story continues, but you guys have decidedly that your situation has gotten worse.
There's a great mechanic as well in Blaze in the Dark that's all about introducing consequences regardless of success or failure. It's called the Devil's Bargain. For the price of one additional die to whatever roll you're rolling, mm-hmm. There's a consequence that you get to introduce into the world, and they get to choose whether they want that additional die for that consequence.
Right.
My favorite thing to do is to turn it over to the table and have the rest of the table come up with the consequence.
I think that's a powerful mechanic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and because it helps everybody build the collaborative.
That is terrible for players like me because I have a gambling problem, and I would just fucking bring it. All the rules.
Would you like to play Blaze in the Dark?
Let's do it. Let's do it sometime. I want to play with Tia.
Yeah. That is just.
Let's do it.
Yep. I seriously want you at my table just for that reason alone, because that sounds like fun.
That is just a horrible, horrible, horrible way to go. I'm just, you're just dead after that campaign. Man.
Yeah, let's do that.
That
game
sounds
sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh man, I love it. Well, guys, it is after 6. We have been kind of talking our asses off for a while. I think that is probably where we're gonna have to hang it up for now. Thank you guys for coming out. Don't run away. We got some cool stuff to go over, some awesome things to talk about. But thank you so much to everyone and all your questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get all of them today. Please feel free to either keep them for next time or drop them in chat the next time you see us. But hope you guys had a good time. Please let us know in chat if you liked the show, if you liked our opinions on things, or you just never want to see us again. But I, of course, am going to go around to my cast and crew, my awesome panel here, and thank them, and we'll get some thoughts on today and some hooks and plugs from everyone before we go into announcements and stuff. So why don't we go around the table, tell us what you thought of the discussion today, and of course where people can find you and what you get up to on the internet. And let's start with you, Tia.
Your auto mod fucking checked my message too.
What?
Someone said that it was like it was fun to listen to, and I was like, yeah, I enjoy being a bitch on the internet in many different places.
Oh,
so
rip! Oh, wait, hold on, wait, hold on. Allow. Click allow.
That's true though. I love being a bitch in many different places on the internet as possible, and I love talking with you guys about this stuff because as jaded and as bitter as I am, I get to hear the positive side of things and weigh that different aspect of it where you guys, are the happy, good people that haven't had this crushed out of you. And I like that. It makes me think that maybe there's still a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I will be here every week because this is just fun. It's fun. You don't get to shit talk with other DMs very often. Most of the time it's DM answering player or player interacting with DM, but an actual DM's table where you just get to honestly vent about crap is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
My players suck. Check.
Jeez. Well, tell everyone where they can find you on the internet and what you get up to and all that goodness.
Twitch everywhere is Laura Lanyx for my Twitter, which is my Tia Zimmer, and I'm constantly on Twitter, so just follow me there. That's the best place. If not, just follow me here on Twitch. Just click on my name, hit that follow button. Let me find my Twitter, and I mean everywhere else, YouTube, etc. Hell, wherever you are looking.
You can find her in hell under @Laurelania.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, there we go. There we go.
I like how you have to copy and paste your own name.
I could have just put the ad thing. It is so much easier just to right-click, copy, paste, than type shit out, okay? God, why do you have the word bitch in your auto mod? Fuck
I
you.
don't even know that was on.
It's like, I don't mind. What is this bullshit? We had no swear jars on this show, please.
God, no.
Oh, jeez. Guys, go give Tia a follow. Go check her out with the awesome D&D and then other gaming content. She's one of them professional streamers. One of them pros.
Professional? Turns on the stream more than 8 hours at a time. Let's go with that one. I don't know about professional, though. Fuck.
Oh, God. Well, go check her out. Definitely give her a follow and thank her for being here. Johnny, man, what about you?
So I have to say this has been probably the most fun I've had in a while, just bullshitting about tabletop, because everybody around this table has had some very different experiences, and it's just all fun coming to it. And then the way Chad has just been, talking shit up. It's been amazing. And I leave with more, oh shit, I've got like a ton of notes. Let's talk about this next week, or let's talk about this the week after that. Or let's talk about this. Like, fuck.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been awesome. My name is Johnny. I run the Video Store Cowboy channel. I'm also the GM for 6 and 20. Go follow me on my channel. On Twitter is the only place where it's not Video Store Cowboy. It is Vid Store Cowboy, and I'm looking at doing a name change there because it's pissing me off. And yeah, you can find me Tuesdays through Thursdays, playing Blades in the Dark right now. And I'm about to actually get off and go have a meeting about the next thing I'm going to be working on. So when this is all done, I hope to have some news to talk about very soon about that. So awesome. And thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Definitely go give Johnny a follow. He's kind of just starting his stream career out on his own channel, and we want to give him all of the support we can. An awesome DM definitely deserves the love. Thank you for being here, my man. And last but not least, Impious.
I still have no idea what I'm doing here or who you people are. No, this was a ton of fun. It was good to vent and to hear other opinions and how wrong they are when it comes to dealing with mechanics. But no, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I know that Tia and I will never play in a game together at this point.
Oh God, we are just like two not people that should play together. I feel sorry for the person that has to DM for us if we're ever both players in the same table. It's just gonna be like, children, please.
Yeah. But no, this was good. This was a lot of fun, and I'm gonna make it back here as absolutely as often as I can. This was a good time. I run Dungeons and Distractions here on Twitch and on Twitter, and we've got way too many games going and not nearly enough time that I want to run more games, but probably shouldn't. But that'll all happen anyway. We've got some stuff on the horizon that I'm really looking forward to doing. And so yeah, but this was a lot of fun. I'll definitely be back.
Sweet man. Definitely go give Dungeons and Distractions a shout out. A shout out, a follow, love, all of that good stuff. I don't know what I'm talking about. Their links are right in the chat. Make sure you drop all of these awesome people some support for their streams. We love having them here, and thank them so much for kind of meeting together and allowing this thing to go on. I'm hoping that this is going to be a fantastic addition to the channel and a ton of fun every week. I'm so looking forward to it. My name is Askren. You guys probably know me. I'm the host here on Exploding Dice, where we have live role-playing and other stuff like this all week long at this point. Geez, what is even going on? Well, right now, obviously, if you guys are here, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to awesome dude SYT and Greensville and Spooner Sloth and HB Fox for following. Thank you guys for joining us, and welcome to the madness. Also, thank you guys for all the hosts, all the shout-outs, all the retweets. You guys are amazing. Thank you for coming out and being so active in chat. It is awesome seeing all of you guys here, and I love how active you guys are, and I love how engaged, and all the great questions. Hopefully, we'll keep this going for a long time. This channel.
Thank you for doing all the production and everything,
Yeah.
and then like
literally nothing.
hanging on to the show.
How do I-
Fuck you! It's nothing. I hate production.
How do I pay you just to do overlays for me?
Yeah.
PayPal. It's Exploding Dice D&D at PayPal.
You're like, this is literally exactly how money.
Exploding Dice D&D at gmail.com if you want to do that. No, guys. I just real quick. So some last minute business. First of all, if you guys, because of that big 3K, we're gonna be giving away this Wormwood dice box later tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern on our Mouse Guard show. The Mouse Guard cast is simply JXN, myself, Drunkly Romantic, and that bronze girl with on the forefront in the DM chair. It is going to be a lot of fun. It always is. And we're going to be giving this away at the end of it. Of course, we have a donation goal coming up. As soon as we hit that, we're going to be doing some more giveaways. We have our monthly Pathfinder giveaway. If you're following here on Twitch and Twitter, you're already entered, so go claim those entries. And geez, all those heart emotes. How many people you fucking sub to, man?
Too many.
I have like 3 subs. No, but what else? Just some quick shout-outs. What else can you guys find on the channel? Of course, 10 p.m. Eastern on Sundays is Mouse Guard The Dark Spring. 4 is DMing that, and it is hilarious and amazing. Tomorrow, Monday, I'm going to be over on the Bubbernauts channel. On Mondays, Eric Vulgaris DMs us in a Mouse Guard game over there with some awesome people, some Roll20 employees, Bubbernaut, Eric, and me, getting up to some ridiculous bee shenanigans. There's black market bees. I don't know if that interests you, but the black market bees are a thing. What else? Tuesdays, of course, is the Fuzzy Dice Show. It is a one-on-one talk show with me and Twitch DMs and podcast creators and nerd celebrities. This week I'm going to be hanging out with Ivan Van Norman, who is coming by to talk for a second time to talk about his new horror game that is on Kickstarter. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Wednesdays, of course, is our brand new show, The Daubers, which you guys came out in huge support for this week. Thank you so much. Splattered Inc. is the DM for that, and we have an amazing cast. Judo Killa, Throck Plays, and Board Game Girl joined me as the cast for that. They are funny, they are engaging, and this week, to celebrate how great our kickoff for that show went, Daryl Splattered Inc. has decided that we are going to be giving away a signed art print because he does custom artwork for the campaign. And are you posing? Are you taking selfies right now?
Always. The camera is always on me, darling. It's a constant problem.
Daryl is going to be giving away a signed art print from the show, so all you have to do is be in chat for that on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern to win. And then Thursdays, we will be talking a little bit later about the cast and some details about it, but coming Thursdays after Twitch PAX Unplugged is our brand new show. It is an all-female pirate show called The Razor Coast, and it is going to be awesome. The cast is crazy good, and I am so looking forward to delivering that to you. Thursdays, that is Thursdays. Fridays we're off, and then Saturdays we're back to Writhing Moon, our horror campaign. Don't miss it. It is great. Oh, that's it for me, guys. I don't have anything else to ramble about. Thank you so much. I think what we're gonna do before we bounce out of here, are they live yet? No, they're still.
Are we not gonna
somebody.
recognize Laura's crown?
I just never recognize Laura in general. Sorry, I was gonna raid someone, but they're still on their starting screen, and I feel like I can't, in good conscience, do that.
This is just how I walk around the house, ask Airho.
Sorry, I'm looking for someone to drop a host on, and let's check out the D&D category. Let's see who's live right now. Let's see someone we haven't hosted before.
Who do we got? I love hosting new people because it's like, you remember that first host that you got and how it made you feel? I love being the person that does that.
I remember someone commented on how excited I got on like my first host, and it was like back when it happened. So yeah, let's find someone. You know what? These guys generally do some good stuff. Let's. I see him on Twitter a lot. Let's give him some love. Why not? We're gonna go host.
Who dis?
What?
Who dis?
We're gonna go host Real Chaotic Good. They are playing some. It looks like they got a new DM in running some Open Legend. So let's go recognize them, guys. Before we do that, I want to say thank you guys once again for hanging out. You guys have so many choices of things that you could spend your afternoon on a Sunday doing, but you chose to spend it here with us when you could have been, I don't know, you could have been melting a Snickers bar, or making clam chili, or
Now
I don't know.
I'm hungry.
One of those
Why
sounded
would-
really good, and the other just does not.
Yeah, Clam Chili, host that channel. I'm done with you. I'm done. Oh
Sorry,
my
I
God.
love just making up random things and then being, but you didn't do any of those. You chose to spend your afternoon here with us, and we love you for it. Thank you so much, guys. We will see you at 10 p.m. Eastern for Mouse Guard. But that is going to be it for us. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for joining us. And as always, we'll see you next time. Don't let Dice Thulu get his tentacles on you, because he gets very, very handy when he does. We'll see you next time, guys. Take care.
Clam Chili?